Hello friends, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink with a card for this week's Color Throwdown Challenge, which I've said it a million times, like a broken record. I love the Color Throwdown Challenge. It gets me to use and think of color combos that I normally don't gravitate towards. So I'll have info on that in my blog post, and I'll link to it in my blog post if you want to check it out, because anyone can play along. But anywho, to start off, I have some Canson XL watercolor paper, and I put it in my splat box with a little bit of paper towel just to soak up some of the mess. And I am creating a soft background, sort of mixed media-ish, and I'm using antique linen and bundled sage distress oxide inks, or oxide sprays, and also my distress sprayer. So the first layer was just kind of soft, a lot of water. The second layer I did like lighter spritzes of the two sprays, and then with the distress sprayer, when you press the handle only halfway, you get the splotches, as you can see there. And I'm just playing. That's trying to explain the thought process. Sometimes it's just like I'm just winging it. And I recommend you do too. It's fun, especially if you're not feeling motivated or you don't know what you want to create. Like I've said in other videos, just grab some paper, grab some inks, and just play. You know, create some backgrounds, die cut them or not. Just create backgrounds. Have fun with it. You know, see what kind of combos and what kind of effects you can get. It's therapeutic. At least it is for me. It's similar to the therapy of feeling when you're doing, like when I'm doing coloring and that sort of a thing. Splattering and ink smushing and spraying inks and all this stuff. I love it. I love it. So anyway, after that background was dry, I pulled out this Fanfare stencil again. At the end of this video, I'll link to the previous video I did with this stencil. Complete polar opposite to this, if you missed it. It was like rainbow glitter paste on black. That's also why I love stencils, because you can get so many different looks from them. So anyway, that stencil I used CRACKLE paste over. So did the stenciling with CRACKLE paste, set aside the background to dry. And now I'm working on more just smaller pieces of that same Canson XL watercolor paper. But now I'm doing some ink smushing. I could have done all of this with sprays, but I was in the mood to do some ink smushing too. And again, it's therapeutic, especially using it this way. I showed this in a previous video as well. This was a little tip I picked up from watching Nina Marie Trapani's videos. I've done ink smushing with like acetate, different things. I've shown it many different ways over the years. But for whatever reason, doing ink smushing with these storage pockets, this is a storage pocket from Simon Says Stamp. I'll link to them. I use these to store my stamp sets, etc. in. And the way the ink beads up on these, it just, I can't explain it. It's really cool. And for a lot of you, I know this also gives you a lot more control because you can see where you're pressing the ink. Personally, I don't care either way because I've shown ink smushing a million different ways. But I like with this how you get the splattery, speckly texture from this, and I can get more white space, which for me is very difficult because I'm very heavy-handed. It's like, let's add 5 million layers. So anywho, this first little piece was just vintage photo and ground espresso distress oxide inks, and I just wipe off my little sleeve. This is my ink smushing sleeve now. This is what I use it for. So it gets bent because I misplace it and it gets shoved into, containers and all that stuff. But I did that first piece with the browns because that's going to be my flower center. And then this larger piece, I'm going to die cut the flower from. And I'm using Dusty Concord first here. And again, this is why I like the Color Throwdown Challenge, because Dusty Concord is a color that I just, for whatever reason, never seem to reach for. But this minute I saw the colors for this challenge for this week, I was like, ooh, that looks like Dusty Concord. So I pulled it out, and it is such a pretty color. I need to use it more often. So I did many layers with this. Like, I've sped this up. I was using my heat tool to dry between the layers. And then I went in with Villainous Potion Distress Oxide just to intensify it a bit. And I've discovered a new favorite purple combo. Dusty Concord and Villainous Potion. Together they are mwah, chef's kiss. Live. Need to experiment more with it. So I did that layer. And then I really get messy. You can always like protect your work surface, all the things. You can wear gloves, all of that stuff. Whatever makes you more comfortable when you're creating, I'm all for it. I don't bother wearing gloves because I don't like the feel of the gloves. You know, we've all got our issues. Anyway, I have no problem making a mess. Like, it's just what I do. And it all cleans, especially ink and stuff. It cleans up with water. It's simple. But anyway, this piece I want to die cut leaves from, and I wanted it to be more, not solid, but more color, less white space. So I'm using Bundled Sage Distress Oxide, and you can see I'm doing just multiple layers, and I'm getting ink everywhere. And I was just having fun with it. Like, I was in my zone and just fully enjoying myself, getting ink all over my work surface, ink all over my hands. Don't care. I'm going to make it worse. I'm actually going to take my Bundled Sage Distress Oxide spray and also spray this onto the background and not bother with my splat box. Because like I said, I was having fun with it. So did all my layers and just got this more solid and without being solid, you know. I got the texture and the splotchies and the spray, and this is all one color, you know. This is just Bundled Sage, and I love it. So it all cleaned up. Everything was dry, so I die cut my pieces. My background is dry, so now I'm going to trim this down. I'm kind of obsessed with panels that are 3 3/4 inches by 5 inches for my card fronts. Don't know why. It's just what I've been doing. So I have my leaves die cut. I use the Tattered Leaves wafer die for that. And then the flower is the Etched layered daisy that came out last year that I just love. So I die cut that brown piece with the flower, and then I'm just trimming off the petals so that I have a separate piece for that flower center. And then I have my 2 pieces that will create the actual flower. So all I got to do is glue them together. And since I'm working with this Canson XL watercolor paper, I'm a little more heavy-handed with my glue. You don't need much, especially this craft tacky glue from Simon. You really don't need a whole lot of it. And I always tell people, usually in videos, like what you see, I'm not using very much. Because if you're using too much glue, regardless of the type of glue, if your cardstock's starting to warp or curl or anything like that, it's either one of 2 things. It's either too much glue or thinner cardstock. But Canson XL is very thick. It's like 140 weight watercolor paper. It can handle the glue. So glue those together, set them aside, pulled out some sentiment strips. This is from the CZ Design. I think it's Foundations. I always forget the names of the sentiment strip packs because there's like 100 of them now. I will have a link though. This is more meant for like Mother's Day and Father's Day, but there was a couple of sentiments that just really stood out to me. So I trimmed down the Thankful for You sentiment and actually cut it in half so it's on 2 separate pieces. And then I trimmed down another one. And I don't want to leave them stark white like this because they're printed on Simon's 120-pound smooth white cardstock. So I created a little handle on my work surface by just taping down a piece of my washi tape sticky side up. And then that'll hold these pieces so that I can just quickly ink blend them. Super simple. I'm just using Antique Linen Distress Oxide ink and a little blending brush. And because these are oxide inks, the ink does cover the sentiment itself a little bit, but I just take my cloth and quickly wipe over that and it removes what's sitting on top of that black lettering and it's good to go. So I ended up doing the little one that I'm going to put on the inside as well, just to keep everything matchy. And same thing. Blend on it with the brush, wipe off what's sitting on top of the words so that they're not, they end up looking like cloudy if you don't wipe it off. And then removing my little handle, wiping away the ink, moving on to the next step. So for the inside of the card, I took a piece of cream cardstock. I've cleaned my stencil. I had cleaned it right after I'd used it with the crackle paste. There's actually still a little bit of stick to it from the pixie spray from that previous video. I've always told you guys, I don't wash. When I use pixie spray on my stencils, I don't wash my stencils off. Or I don't wash the pixie spray off. I just leave it. It stays and I can just keep reusing, you know, even that little tiny bit of stick, like it's hardly anything, but it's just enough to hold that cardstock in place, which is perfect. So anywho, I bundled Sage Distress Oxide ink with a larger blending brush, just lightly over that. And then, again, clean my work surface. And then my cardstock base for my card is going to be Nina Desert Storm 100-pound cardstock, standard A2 top folding card. So I made my card base. I adhered that panel on the inside and the little sentiment. And then I just laid my card front kind of on top of the card base to kind of give me a visual of where I'm going to place everything. And then I wrapped my card front with some of my little burlap twine, or my ivory twine. So I wrapped it around 3 times and just taped it in place with washi tape, and then just used a separate piece to tie a little bow on there. So once I've got that, I'm going to start adhering all of my elements, again just using craft tacky glue. So I'm going to adhere everything, then I'm going to flip over the card base or the card front and put Simon's Big Mama foam tape on the back of this so that it's got a little bit of dimension, but also it adheres it straight and flat since I've got all that twine wrapped around it. So I'm going to get that adhered into place. I decided not, at the moment anyway, to cut off any of the parts sticking over the edge. I will probably do that before I mail it because this won't fit in the envelope. You could use a larger envelope, or you just cut off what's hanging off the edge. Either way, whatever floats your boat. Of course, I'm going to add bling. I have 2 kinds of bling. I have some Studio Claudia vintage shimmer pearls, so there's pretty ivory, and then some Trinity Stamps glamorous grape baubles. I love the names of all of these. They just, I don't know why. I just love it. So, as always, I have enough lifetimes of bling that I can almost always find colors to go with everything. So anywho, sprinkled them throughout this card, adhered them into place with dabs of the craft tacky glue. Once those are all adhered, I'm going to pair this card with one of Simon's metallic lavender envelopes. And that's what has me kind of like, maybe I should trim off the bits hanging over, because the envelope just like completes the little set. So yeah, I'm trying to show the crackle on that stenciling. It's hard to see because it's such a detailed stencil, but in real life, it's just nice and subtle. So I hope you guys enjoyed. As always, I will have a link below the video to my blog post. I will link to the color throwdown challenge in said blog post. I will have a supply list. I'll link to all the supplies I used, so you can check that out below if you are interested. Thank you all so much for watching and subscribing and thumbs upping and commenting, all of it. I very much appreciate it. And I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye.